Jesus Trilogy, Book 1, The Four Messiahs, Chapter 61. The sun was bright and high in the sky. It was a 1 p.m. kickoff, and the crowd was now gathering for the game of the decade. Tickets had been selling for upwards of 100 shekels for the prime seats. Jerusalem East was not only the biggest school in all Judea, but the richest. All the elite of Jerusalem and surrounding environs, even the Rome higher-ups, such as George and Joanna, and even Pilate sent their children there. The poor high school Jerusalem West was where the riffraff went, the kids of the working class. But any very bright student or good athlete was brought over to the East, no matter his lot in life. Jerusalem East was determined to build itself into an athletic and academic power. The four horsemen and Mary, Jesus' academically accomplished love, had all been approached on the subject, but all had declined. Mary was the most reluctant to turn them down, but she finally did so. As she sat on the sidelines behind the team bench, she still wondered if she had done the right thing. Jerusalem East could have been fun and a real step up in class. She had come from nothing and was planning to make a name for herself. She had dated Judas and several other guys before she hit it off with Jesus. As she looked at the players on the field, she wondered how certain ones would be in bed. She had done it a few times with Judas and some of the others, but never with Jesus. After all, she loved him, and there would be plenty of time for that after they were married. But she was still having doubts. He was a carpenter's son, and she knew he would have a good job. He would love her and be able to support her, and she desperately wanted children. But why was she still having thoughts of other guys? And why were there all these doubts? She didn't know. Maybe she was abnormal. But no, that couldn't be. She was a red-blooded girl with normal wants and desires. She jumped as Jesus touched her lightly on the shoulder, then leaned over and kissed her. He was such a good kisser. She loved to kiss him more than anything in this world. She smiled up at him, and reality returned. He was so handsome. What lovely children they could make. The cheerleaders were doing their thing, and the crowd was nearly settled in. The vendors would have a field day. There were some temporary boxes built especially for Pilate and Herod. When these high officials entered, the noisy crowd became hushed. Pilate addressed the crowd. My fellow Romans and Hebrews, we have come here today to witness the game of the decade. We thank Caesar for his support of our schools and his promotion of excellence in athletics. It is gratifying for me to preside over this game. Good luck to all, and may the best team win. I am honored to be witness to my son Julian's final high school game. May Caesar's shadow watch over him and bring us victory. With that, the highly partisan crowd went wild. The band started up. The Nazareth team looked on quietly. Some seemed intimidated by all the pageantry and hype in the crowd, but the four horsemen remained stone-faced and resolute, as they had before every game. No one intimidated them, not even Caesar's henchman, Pontius Pilate. So what if his son was Julian and was the East quarterback? So what if they had the greatest team in Jerusalem East history? The reputation wouldn't matter a bit on the football field. There would be man against man, and the better man would win. The horsemen's resolve was rock solid. They had determined that they were the better team, and they were going to go back to Nazareth as winners. There was no doubt in any of the four's mind. They would win. As the Roman anthem was sung and the Hebrew prayer was offered, not only the tension, but also the resolve began to rise in all four. Their record was perfect, and they would not allow anyone to blemish it. They had worked too hard and had come too far. Once the prayer was finished, the noise of the crowd began to crescendo until no one could hear anything. Julian had been in this situation many times and had all the hand signals worked out, but Barabbas was getting concerned. How would the team hear his signals? Julian and East would have no trouble, but he had no hand signals, and there was no time to devise any. Maybe at halftime, but then it might be too late. Coach Vincenti calmed his quarterback. Just play your game. You practice it 1,000 times, he said. Repetition and execution win football games. Nothing more, nothing less. Barabbas was still anxious. The throw was suddenly not a concern. He had to win this game. The huge gong jolted them all back to reality. The four horsemen were co-captains, and they all went out for the coin toss. Julian and Simon were co-captains of the Jerusalem East team. Tradition was that the visiting captains would toss the coin and call it in the air. But to their surprise, the ref handed the big Roman coin to Julian. He smiled and promptly flipped it in the air, calling heads. It came down to earth with a dull thud. Staring the four horsemen in the face was the head of Julius Caesar. Heads, the ref said as he picked up the coin. Jesus wondered what the other side of the coin looked like, but said nothing. Do you wish to kick or receive? Receive, Julian answered. Which goal do you want to defend? He then asked Judas. We'll take the east end, sir, Barabbas said. Not only would the crowd noise be worse if they were up against the east wall on offense, but Barabbas had to make that throw at the end of the game. He wondered if he would have to do it during the game. It might be his only opportunity, and he wanted to be in the right position to do it. Also, by going away from the wall on offense early, they could build a lead, take the crowd out of it, and then pull away from this team. The kickoff sailed high in the air toward the west end zone away from the city wall. Waiting at the goal line was Simon. The crowd roar was deafening as he cradled the ball and turned to head upfield. He cut to his right, but the phalanx of blockers was already breaking down. He got to the 30-yard line and appeared to be headed into a bunch of tacklers bearing down on him. But to everyone's amazement, he stopped cold, reversed field, and ran back into the end zone. Now he swung back out to the left. He reached the 20 and made one of his amazing 90-degree cuts going full bore. The Nazareth tacklers had swung left, anticipating Simon would head out of bounds. But after cutting, he raced back to the right side of the field and everything opened up. None of the four horsemen helped on special teams, but Jesus volunteered today. He was the only one of the four to be completely healthy, and he had been instructed to lay back if something like this should happen. Vincenti told him to stay in the middle of the field. Fortunately for Jesus, he did just that. He began the angle on Simon. Simon was faster and thought he was going to go all the way, but to his surprise, he saw Jesus angling in on him. It appeared they would meet at the goal line. As they reached the 10-yard line, Simon made another one of his 90-degree cuts to the left, but he had underestimated Jesus' agility. When he cut, Jesus did also, and then flew through the air, catching Simon's left ankle with his right hand. He pulled Simon down at the 4-yard line. Simon got up slowly. He was really peeved. The crowd booed vociferously, but the ref pointed to the east goal. First and goal, he bellowed, and the crowd went wild again. Simon, very upset at not scoring, asked Julian for the ball and went straight up the middle, dragging tacklers with him for the easy score. East lined up for the extra point, but Simon, who was out at a flanker position, came across the middle of the backfield, took the pitch from Julian, and roared into the end zone untouched. The crowd erupted. Simon did the end zone dance, the Simon Says, and pumped the air with his fist, further exciting the partisan crowd. Jesus looked at the clock. 15 seconds had gone by. 8-0 was the score. Quickly multiplying, he came up with the final score, 1,920-0. His heart sank. On the ensuing kickoff, Johnny and Judas were both deep. They had used this double setup many times, often lateraling and blocking for one another. But even Coach Vincenti was caught off guard, a rare occurrence. Jerusalem East executed a surprise onside kick. It worked perfectly. With Nazareth not expecting it, East recovered at the 50-yard line. Pandemonium broke out. One of the cheerleaders ran out on the field and kissed the player who had recovered the ball. After much discussion, the referee penalized East 10 yards, but they still had the ball on their own 40, only 60 yards to go. Another touchdown, and this game might essentially be over. The booing of the refs was loud and long. Stuff was thrown on the field. The refs talked about assessing a delay of game penalty on the East team, but feared for their own safety. They finally got the crowd back down to a dull roar, and the Eagles began to drive down the field. It was classic power football. After 6 plays, all runs by Simon, they were in the red zone at the 18-yard line. Simon was panting, but the already tired Knight defense had no reason not to expect another Simon run. They were right about the play, but wrong about the ball carrier. Julian, instead of pitching the ball, kept it and ran in untouched for the touchdown. The kick for the extra point was blocked by a leaping Johnny, but it went straight up in the air and came down in the hands of an unsuspecting Simon, who was straddling the goal line. The ref raised his arm. Scores, Eagles 16, Knights nothing. Now 7 minutes into the game, Ching Lin began to fidget. 10 million on this game, and these Knights were getting killed. What should he do at halftime? Double his bet, or would the Knights wake up? Judas was really getting anxious. Sweat was pouring down his back, and he hadn't even been on offense yet. He had bet it all, 5,000 shekels on the Knights. He wanted to show Gentile what a rich man he would be. With the score looking so bad, he now figured he would lose it all, not only the money, but also his beloved Gentile. Judas still put love and money on equal ground, a fatal thinking which would haunt him for eternity. He didn't dare look up at Gentile or Ching. Cindy called the offense over and took a timeout. He gave them the standard lecture. Play sound, fundamental football. Block, tackle, and protect the ball at all costs. It didn't help. After a 1-yard gain by Johnny on first down, Barabbas was sacked twice in succession, and with the ball in their own 2, they punted. The snap sailed high over the punter's head and out of the end zone into the stands. A safety. 18-0. The ensuing free kick was run back by Simon to midfield, and Julian drove the team down to the 20. But on 3rd and 6, his pass was batted down, and the Eagles settled for a field goal, 21-0. The first quarter ended mercifully. The Nazareth Knights had run only 3 offensive plays. Coach implored them to keep blocking and tackling and assured them that good things would happen. He remained confident that the momentum would shift.